At the dawn of the Common Era, in the heart of the desert, there was a society that was thriving. Their engineering feats are exemplified by over 200 pyramids built by the mid-1st century, and we're not talking about Egypt. In today's video, I'll be discussing Amanitore and Nubia. Mskagna, hello and welcome to my video. In this series, I intend on talking on each leader and civilization featured in the video game Civ 6, as well as their different abilities and unique units, tile improvements, and buildings, and how they are inspired by real-life history. In the sands of the Nubian desert, along the banks of the Nile, in the kingdom of Kush, within its capital of Meroe, and its palace of Jebel Bakal, sat Amanitore, the Kandake of Meroe and Kush. To be Kandake was to be a warrior queen, and to be the queen regent of the land. This would mean that she had the responsibility of reigning while the king could not, either him being too young, dead, or incapable. Though by the end of the rule, Amanitore had ruled by herself, there was a period of time where she had co-ruled with King Narakamani. The Kandake was a very well-regarded role and very powerful within the Cushitic political structure. And while they could traditionally just groom their children to be kings, as was the role's intention, they could also force them to step down and resign, assuming power for themselves. Amanitore may have been one such Kandake, but it was clear her kingdom prospered under her. She oversaw great engineering undertakings, including the construction of some 200 Nubian pyramids, and the restoration of several temples to the god Amun. There is not much known of Amanitore, but her legacy is undeniable, as many of the rulers who would assume the throne long after she was gone would seek to emulate the greatness that she presented to the world. And while literature may have not put her name to paper, the Kandake of the Cushitic kingdom of Meroe, who ruled from 1 BCE to 50 of the Common Era, and oversaw a golden age with the turn of the millennia, would not be forgotten. To really understand what her legacy presents, we'll have to look closer at the region of Nubia itself, and the kingdoms that came before and after. She was a fierce, shrewd, and wise queen, and clearly So everyone should know about the Nile River, the longest river in the world that comes from Lake Victoria and empties out into the Mediterranean. And everybody knows about Egypt, the country settled along the banks of this famous river. But further south, there's a part of the Nile called the cataracts. And these are a series of very rocky, very dangerous rapids. And it would be here that we would find the region of Nubia between the 1st and the 6th cataracts. The name Nubia is thought to come from either the Noba people who settled here after the collapse of the Cushitic kingdom of Meroe, or possibly from the ancient Egyptian word Nub, meaning gold. People have been living in the region of Nubia since time immemorial. However, we do have evidence that dates back to around 13,000 BCE of people occupying the area. By about 5,000 BCE, this occupation had turned to full settlement, where people were domesticating animals, and they were farming, and in general making agriculture a part of their society. These people were also pretty wealthy in copper and gold, and this gold would attract the attention of the ancient Egyptians. By around 2500 BCE, the ancient Egyptians set up gold mining colonies by the Second Cataract. This would result in more trade traffic through the area. Now, the thing about the cataracts is you can't really traverse them with the boat because it'll tear it apart. So what the sailors and merchants would have to do is unload their cargo and move it by land. So you could imagine that people passing through the area would be pretty tired from carrying all that cargo. And so a rest stop named Kerma would sort of pop up. By about 2400 BC, this rest stop is a full-blown town. It would later evolve to become the Cushitic Kingdom of Kerma. Now, a few centuries later, we can tell that this relationship between the Egyptians and the Nubians did not stay amicable the whole time, as armed conflicts started to rise by about 2100 BCE. There would be many a kerfuffle between Kush and Egypt, as the Egyptians wanted to control the entire Nubian region. By about 1460 BCE, Egypt would succeed in its conquests of Nubia, and during this time of occupation, Kerma would still remain a prosperous city, but a new one was starting to sprout. This one would be called Napata. A clan would soon rise to prominence in the city of Napata and become the most powerful in all of Nubia, and soon, Egypt as well. The Cushitic kingdom out of Napata would conquer the whole of Egypt, but this wouldn't last forever, as the Assyrians would later invade and would push the Nubians all the way back to the cataracts. The Egyptians, after getting their independence from the Assyrians, would later exact their revenge on the Nubians. In the year 591, the pharaoh Psamtik II would invade Nubia. The following year, the capital Napata would be captured, and so Meroe would have to be the new capital of Nubia. The Cushitic kingdom out of Meroe would become culturally distinct from the Egyptians, as they would start to develop a religion separate from the Egyptian one, as well as their own writing system. In the year 30 BCE, the Roman Emperor Augustus would overthrow Cleopatra and annex Egypt, bringing Nubia face to face with the empire. Nubia would choose to become a tributary of the Romans up until the year 27 BCE. This would be the year that Queen Amanitore would capture several cities along the Nile when she went to war with Rome. These victories wouldn't last forever, as the Romans would later counterattack, pushing the Nubians all the way back, raising Napata and advancing on Meroe. They wouldn't be able to secure their capital, however, and so there would be a deadlock between the Romans and the Nubians in the desert. Later, a peace treaty would be brokered between the two sides, and it would return to the status quo, with the addition of the Nubians paying for the reparations for the damage they did to the Egyptian cities. About 20 years later, we find ourselves when Amanitore would have been ruling. The rulers before her and the rulers after her were also prolific builders, and there's plenty of signs of civilization at Napata, Kerma, and Meroe, as their magnificent structures can still be seen today. It's unknown how the end of Kush came to be. However, one theory is that the kingdom of Axum to the south had invaded them in the 4th century and annexed Meroe and the area surrounding it, finally putting an end to the story of the Kushites. Later, indigenous tribes of Africa would settle the area, including the Noba people, bringing Nubia its name today. Nubia is often overlooked when compared to Egypt to its north, but both of them have a very interesting history. But a place like Kush and Nubia shouldn't be forgotten. Their history is just as rich and interesting as Egypt, Greece, or any culture around them. Inspiring stories of warrior queens leading their armies against legionnaires is still really freaking cool. I'm glad to see Amanitore as one of the civilization leaders. Okay, so now that we talked about the context around Amanitore and Nubia, we can talk about their special abilities, as well as their special units. So first of all, we'll start with Amanitore's ability, Kandake of Nubia. This is an ability that really encourages you to build more districts and kind of make your cities taller, just kind of really consolidating your power in those cities and amplifying them, because in Civ 6, districts are everything. So the Kandakes of Nubia were all well known for their great building projects and their efficiency in architecture and in general just being great engineers. So this ability makes a lot of sense in that context. Next, we have the ability Tasseti, which is the unique ability for Nubia itself. And this is actually one of the nicknames given to the land of Nubia by the Egyptians, Land of the Bow, because their archers were so amazing. And this excellence in archery is really exemplified in the ability giving 50% more production towards archers and giving them more experience right off the go. See, and actually in ancient Egypt, the Patari archers came from Tasseti, where the Patari archers, Nubia's unique unit, were some mercenary archers that was conscripted by Egypt to help fight in their wars. Their additional running speed and general prowess as archers is just more or less indicative of how effective these soldiers were, and also lending to the fact that they kind of helped to create a nickname for the land they came from. And finally, we have the Nubian pyramids. Super famous. If anything, this is what Nubia is most known for. The Nubian pyramids can be seen to this very day, and are a testament to the great works of architecture and engineering that the Nubians were capable of. And really, if you're not spamming these out the way the real-life Nubians did, you're probably not playing Nubia, right? Because really you want to have these guys all around your districts. If you have a free tile, bam, Nubian pyramid. So that really takes care of everything historically relevant to Amanitore, Nubia, and Civilization 6. I really hope that this video encourages you to look in more about them. I learned a lot making this video. They're definitely more obscure in the grand stage of global history in terms of what I learned in school. This was a huge gap in my knowledge. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and share, and maybe even subscribe if you come from a land of gold and bows. Also, leave a comment if you want to say anything nice or constructive, or maybe just yell at me if you didn't like how I used Nubia and Kush interchangeably sometimes. That's cool too. There's a lot that I learned during this video, and it's hard to kind of condense an entire people's history down to like 10 to 15 minutes worth of edutainment. So I do encourage everybody that watches these to find reputable sources of information and just read about them. I usually go with Encyclopedia Britannica as often as I can, but Nubia doesn't have too much on there compared to some of the other stuff like Alexandria had. Thank you so much again, and you guys have a wonderful night. I really appreciate you. You're a gorgeous, wonderful, smart, and strong human being. And clearly, thick as